I am the shadow teacher. And many times you hear the process is more rewarding than the outcome itself. And the importance of falling in love with the process, no matter what dream you're chasing, what dream you're running down. And many of you who watch my videos are running down your own dreams, and I'm running down my dream. But I just had a deep conversation with a very close friend, someone who has reached a level of success in his life that very few make it to. Yet, he is at a point of personal crisis. He's achieved exactly what he wanted, and then some. But what's daunting at this point is the realization that all things at some point turn to dust. And this existential crisis of wondering, what was it all for? Why are we here? I hit this thing, yet I'm not happy. And very few people get to look down from this mountain where I'm standing on. And what I found is when someone's actually there, like, there's nothing that I could say. I could talk about gratitude and perspective. I could talk about the process, and we did. We reflected a little bit on the rewards he felt in his process of chasing that dream. And I shared my own experiences. I haven't achieved something quite as big as he has yet, but in that story gap, when you hit something or when you hit a certain point, that's been more my life. I've been chasing some big dreams, and I would hit markers of success. Then I would get to these impasse points. I would get to this point to where the information wasn't coming in for me to advance, and certain situations would show up, and I would have to make a choice. And that choice involved a sacrifice of what I was pursuing before. And that's sort of where I was at. I took some side roads that took me off my original path. But my friend, he stayed straight and narrow, and he made it. And again, there's nothing that someone could say at that point that can make that person feel better. And it just got me thinking of how happiness is fleeting. Happiness is going to come and go. And when you hit a big success, there's going to be a sense of reward for making that dream come true, but it's going to pass. And then what? Then what do you do? And what I find with people I know, as long as someone's engaged with the process of life and engaged with a creative energy that extends beyond themselves and extends beyond their own hedonistic pleasure, then happiness returns and joy returns. And contentment and purpose can show up again. But when the calling and what to do, that can sometimes be mysterious. And we were talking as well about the nature of my friend and his brother. His brother's also very, very successful. And they have very different lives, but both are very successful. And we're just reflecting on the how each two people living in very different worlds, equal success but very different, wishing they could be in the other person's world, wishing they could have what the other person has that they can't do right now due to their own commitments or their own circumstances. And sometimes you got to wonder, is the human experience a cruel joke? This experience in the Matrix. The Gnostic perspective is that the Matrix, the world that we live in, is a prison planet created by an evil god, an evil architect, the demiurge, Yaldabaoth. And the movies, the Matrix movies, reflect this theme as well. And that people are always going to be in a state where they're chasing this elusive form of happiness. But when they get whatever they think is going to make them happy, they find themselves miserable again, or more miserable than ever, in the fact they spent all this time chasing something, and yet this feeling of despair finds them yet again. Now, this is not my personal belief. I do believe that we are in a matrix, and the matrix is controlled by a spirit that thrives on human misery and human vanity and human suffering and human futility, chasing the wrong things, chasing things, and then only finding themselves more depressed than ever. But I believe beyond that is a creative spirit. And through therapy, I was able to find that the happiest times in my life were all connected with creativity. And I sought to understand my own creative nature and how that creativity flows through me. And when I started to learn what it took on my part to water that creativity, to always recognize it and allow it to blossom in my life, no matter where I am, then I was able to pull out of some of these dark places in me. And this is what I'm hoping my friend, who is a creative person at heart, I hope he's able to tap into his creativity again, because it's in there, even though he can't see it at this time. But the spirit of creativity, which just goes beyond description and definition, it's just this feeling that is innate and expresses itself in the human soul. It literally expresses itself in the creation of life, when two people come together and they create life together. But it doesn't end with that. It shows up in just these infinite possibilities. And whichever form of creativity and creation wants to come through us, or that we can connect to, I've found there is innate joy, innate feeling of bliss with that. And it brings meaning to the human experience. It brings transcendental, sublime meaning to what we're experiencing here on earth. And when we get to these places to where we're feeling sadness, I feel we always, a practice that I've found helpful is acknowledging the times in our life, or the times in my life, where I felt happiness, where I've found flow as well. There's an episode on Paul Chek's podcast, Living 4D with Paul Chek. His guest, I believe, was Eileen Troberman, and she was a Alexander practitioner, and she offered this practice of like going through all of your fingers and asking the phrase, where do I find ease? Where do I find just a little bit of ease? Where do I find ease today? Where do I find ease right now? Where do I find ease at this time? Just asking, where do I find ease in 4 or 5 different ways, and going through all of the fingers of your hand. It's a meditation of some sense. And she, being an Alexander practitioner, like I'm sure used that for physical ease in the body, but what I've found is that same practice works for a sense, almost something like a gratitude practice. It's acknowledging places in life where we find fortune and ease. So even where we may be running up into some brick walls with things, or feel lost in a situation where we've actually accomplished something and don't know where to go, simply acknowledging something positive in our life is always crucial in offsetting that and stopping a downward spiral. So I've said a lot today, but I want to circle back to the start, loving the process, tapping into how creativity wants to show up in you, and acknowledging ease, acknowledging places of success, of joy, of places in your life where you're feeling some flow. And that being said, I'm going to end this video, end this transmission, and I'll see you on the other side. Be well, my friend.